Serious, what are some places on Earth that are still unexplored because locals fear them? And what are they afraid of? It's not unexplored per se. But the Plutonian at Hierapolis emits toxic gas intense enough to kill most living things in moments. And was assumed to be a gate to the underworld. In a rather illuminating display of their culture. Rather than avoiding the cave of painfully slow asphyxiation, the Romans turned it into a tourist attraction at which one could purchase a live animal to throw in or meet oracles of Pluto who had been through into the cave and lived. The Strid is an unassuming body of water in Bolton Abbey, Yorkshire. It looks like a quaint little stream in a quiet countryside. It's so narrow you could pretty much hop across. Don't fall in though. Because there's more to it than meets the eye. Just below the surface are deep underwater caverns and churning currents. You'll be swept below and vanish underground and underwater. Your remains will never be found. Bottomless lakes in New Mexico are what they sound like. Some of the small lakes have no bottom and feed underground rivers and streams stretching hundreds, possibly thousands of miles. Trackers have been tossed in and found days later in the Gulf of Mexico. They have claimed many lives of careless swimmers and the dangerous lakes are now sealed off. I swam in the safe ones nearby but always felt kinda creeped out. Yup, had a friend swimming on the lake near Angel Fire NM and locals came out screaming to get him to come out to the lake having dangerous holes. This sounds like it. Morgan Island, Akamonkey Island. A 4,500 acre island off the coast of Beaufort, SC, south of Charleston. Is off limits due to a colony of monkeys living there who are infected with herpes B. 1,400 of them. Research animals. Were relocated there in 1979 and have apparently thrived. The tomb of the Chinese emperor, Qin Shi Huangdi. Although we have seen images of his famous terracotta warriors, nobody has ever entered the tomb. Since he was the most tyrannical and violent leader in Chinese history. And because he was so powerful. There is a lot of superstition about his evil spirit and other crazy things about it. Not to mention, there is rumor of a lake of mercury within the tomb. So it could prove dangerous to open at all. The Chinese government is not allowing the tomb to be opened and zealously restricts people from having access to the land surrounding the tomb. Just interesting. I would really like to know what's inside TBH. Edit. People are mentioning Mao being way more tyrannical. I know he was horrible, but I was under the impression that although Mao held more people, that was partially due to the length of his reign vs that of Qin, and also that Qin employed a lot more brutal tactics unlike Mao's extreme communism. The bottom of the Cave of the Crystals in Mexico. The cave is naturally so hot and filled with water most of the time. It can't be fully explored. But the pictures are gorgeous from when people did go in. Wikipedia.org. This is the place where in order to explore it, the spelunkers had to wear refrigerative suits and could only go so far due to their suits overheating. It's like a journey to the center of the earth. Huska Castle was built to cover up the opening to hell, a seemingly bottomless pit from which the demons of hell would crawl out at night to wreak havoc. Located in the Czech countryside. Before the castle was built to seal this entrance to hell, prisoners who had been condemned to death were thrown in. Scary sheet, my dudes. The catacombs under Paris. There are about 150 miles of maze-like tunnels under the city. Only a small portion gets toured by the public. People have ventured deep into them and will go missing for days. North Sentinel Island. Its inhabitants are one of the few, possibly one of the only peoples untouched by technology. They are also very violent and protective of their land against outsiders, attacking anyone who goes near. Local governments even decided they have jurisdiction to kill anyone who interferes with them to help preserve their pre-technology way of life. So no one goes there except at their own risk. Because of this, it's impossible to explore the island properly. And even more unfortunately, learn about their incredible culture. Edit. Grammar. Recently, an ancient city was discovered in the vicinity in the forest area in Rio Platano, Honduras. Recently, because the cartels have such a big ducking hold over it, that it's simply impossible to go in there without dying or worse. So much history that could await along that river. Not found because of drug lords. La Ciudad Blanca, I believe it was called. There's an area in Tibet called the Tsangpo Gorge that allegedly has a massive hidden waterfall that only appears to people who have reached nirvana. Last I checked. The Chinese don't allow people to explore the area much, but that may have changed by now. There's a book about it written by a guy named Ian Baker who did 2 expeditions into the gorge. Tibetan Buddhism has other similar places called Beal, which are hidden valleys. Shambhala, Wikipedia org, is believed to be one of these hidden places. The idea is really interesting, a place that borders physical and spiritual worlds. It is said that some of these places contain primitive cities, think Amazon tribes who have never seen modern society, that are in an utopia state, no wars. Fighting, everyone is blissful, etc. Shangri-La is the fictional creation of Shambhala. Believe it or not, but there are a lot of parts of Greenland that are still unexplored. However, it's not really due to fear. It's more that it's a giant sheet of ice. Most of the world's blue holes are unexplored because they are ducking dangerous. They are deep underwater sinkholes. Hundreds of feet deep. One is over 900 feet deep that generally have a toxic layer acid part of the way down. The Darien Gap. A 100-mile gap in the Pan America Highway. Covering terrain that includes Panama and Colombia. But is effectively governed by neither. Most of it is marshland and with virtually no infrastructure, it is a wet cesspool of tropical disease and, historically, paramilitary groups. People do live in it. In certain regions. And migrants traverse its more worn paths out of desperation. But it's virtually guaranteed to claim the lives of the careless. There is nothing of civilization or man's law there. Kolotsyak in Siberia. The name means dead mountain in Mansi, the language of the local tribe there. It's also where the infamous Dyatlov Pass incident took place. There's a huge sinkhole behind my old house in Kentucky. Kentucky is absolutely full of caves. Anyways, it has a river flowing at the bottom and through a tunnel. So there's 2 cave entrances that nobody in my neighborhood had the gonads to go into. My mom's friend visited one day. And she's a geologist, so she's huge into caves and wanted to see. I brought Get there to take a look. She basically glanced at it and was like, "Duck, no, we'll die if we go in there." The current is very strong. And the rock surrounding it looked very eroded to her. She said it's at high risk of collapsing. And the current would sweep us underground either way. I wish she had brought more of her tools and stuff. Supposedly she could have put in like a sonar buoy to see how far it goes. My favorite story is MT. Kailash in China. Conspiracy theorists say that it's actually a man-made pyramid from an ancient advanced race. It's only compelling because going to the top is prohibited by the Chinese government. There are some places down the Atchafalaya Basin that no human has ever set foot on because of the 17+ foot alligators there. Seriously. I will try to find the link to the Louisiana wildlife, but there was this one that bit the front end of an airboat completely off. Someone has a picture of it carrying a whole deer in its mouth. It wasn't photoshopped. There's this island close to India. Just kidding. La Cueva de los Teos. A cave system in Ecuador that has been explored before. But not fully due to religious reasons, superstitions from the Aboriginals. And because the Ecuadorian government for some reason has it practically off limits to anyone. Instead giving permission to explore a smaller cave system that is connected to the former. But it is not the real one. Different artifacts have been found. But a special one stands out of a human eagle form, most likely a god, that is for all intents and purposes exactly the same as another one that is found on ancient Mesopotamia, if I'm remembering correctly. Weird considering that ancient cultures didn't have any sort of contact with each other. That, plus golden scripts. The normal Indiana Jones stuff. Oh. And Neil Armstrong was once there as part of one of the expeditions in the 70s. One of the world's tallest mountains still has never been climbed because of religious reasons. Not sure if it's fair, but it's fascinating to think that there's still a first summit left out there. Which mountain? Gangkapoonsam in Bhutan. Hades Gate, or the Gate to Hell in Denizli, Turkey. Supposedly, there's so much carbon dioxide coming out of the entrance of the ancient site that anything that gets close to it dies from asphyxiation. Scientists have determined, because this cave sits along a fault line, that the carbon dioxide filled it from an opening in the Earth's crust. I lived in the northern part of the Republic of Congo in a town called Mfondo. It was extremely remote, only accessible by boat or plane. There were many villages surrounding our city that were even more remote and only accessible by a dugout canoe. One of these places was Lake Tele. The locals would talk about an animal or monster called Mokelmbembe in Lingala, the tribal language. It meant one who stops the flow of water. They basically thought it was a huge dinosaur that lived in the water there. They would describe it like we would a brontosaurus. They were terrified of where it lived because there were old legends that it would kill people with its size, and if anyone ate its meat it would kill the whole village. It was hard to explore that part of the country because people tended to avoid it. The tomb of Genghis Khan. We know it's in Mongolia and probably near the area he was born. But other than that we don't know a damn thing. For a few reasons. When he died they hid it on purpose. The people of Mongolia don't want it found. And I remember hearing somewhere that it might have been found by Russia and is in an area where they've got something like missile silos or something like that. But, oh boy, I can't even imagine what he'd have been buried with. The Inyanga Mountains in Zimbabwe. The myth is that if you climb this mountain and make nasty derogatory comments about the vegetation or rocks or anything you see there, for example, you pick a fruit and comment on how bitter it tastes, you'll disappear forever. It sounds ridiculous until you learn that several people, including tourists, have disappeared in that mountain. Extensive manhunts and helicopter searches failed to find a single person, dead or alive. Locals fear the mountain, but tourists take it as a challenge. But doesn't end up good for a lot of them. The most recent case was Zaid Dada. The Pine Barrens in New Jersey. Creepy sheet, creepy folklore. Jersey Devil's Home. Kayi kayi kayi, lol, meeting ground. Dead body disposal site for the mafia. Ghost girl in random pond. Many other bizarre things there. All I ever saw was a clan meeting and some very creepy satanic cult stuff in an abandoned house out there. Books and Weird NJ have articles and such on the place. Really interesting tbh. Kahulawi. It's one of the Hawaiian Islands. No one lived there due to no fresh water source. During WWII, the US Army used it as a training ground and gun range. For a long time people couldn't go there cause there were still landmines around the island. They may have been cleared out now, but there still isn't anyone who lives there. Also, Molokai had a lot of beaches with strong riptides that were very dangerous. I remember we were afraid to go to the beach when we visited. There are some other beaches like that as well on the other islands. Colombia has a lot of unexplored mountains and jungles, which makes them perfect for guerrilla fighters and drug cartels to hide, operate in, and also dangerous to explore. Padmanabhaswamy Temple in Kerala, India. There are 6 underground vaults labeled Ataf in the temple, out of which 5 have been opened. From these 5 vaults, about a ton of gold in form of jewelry, coins and utensils has been found. Apart from diamond and other precious stones, necklaces stretching 9 feet long. But the real mystery lies in the vault B, which is yet to be opened. There's a warning on the door written in Sanskrit that curse and calamity will befall on anyone who tries to open the door. The door is said to have been sealed with Nagabandham, or the snake seal, by a Siddha Purashaka, a very powerful sage who has realized the true potential that a human can achieve through spiritual disciplines such as meditation. A Siddha Purush is like a living god, and only a Siddha Purush can open this vault again using the Garuda mantra. Any other human being who tries to open the vault will fail and feel the wrath of the 7-headed serpent that guards the vault. This 7-headed serpent is one of the primal beings of creation and servant of the creator of the universe, God Vishnu. The Nahanni Valley in Western Canada, called the Headless Valley. In particular a place called the 200-mile Gorge. The natives that lived there didn't like outsiders. The other natives feared them and they had a penchant for decapitating victims and supposedly just vanished. The region is still largely unexplored because it is extremely remote. And if legends are to be believed, cursed place has it all. Native ghost warriors, Bigfoot sightings, aliens, caves full of ancient dead goats, and prehistoric animals. In the area around Kenora, Ontario, roughly 2 hours east of Winnipeg, there have been reports of a Wendigo spirit loose for at least 150 years. On a nearby island called Tunnel Island there is a white pine aged to be roughly 300 years old. The Wendigo is said to live in the tree. There is even a sign stating the history and warning any visitors to touch the tree at their own risk. For many years the Victoria mining claims on Rushdie Mountain in British Columbia's north coast were voluntarily off limits due to massive amounts of radiation. The claims were mined for uranium during the Second World War, some of which ended up in the Trinity test. It was reported that for the first decade a blue-white glow could be seen emanating from the valley where the mine was located. To this day the waste piles are devoid of moisture and snow even in the dead of winter. Almost everyone who worked at the Victoria claims died around the age of 45. Almost all due to cancer of some form or another. I visited the place back in 2004 with a radiation detector and was blown away by how hot the waste pile was. Under the sea. Mostly. I have no clue why. The deep sea requires vehicles that can endure enormous amounts of pressure to not be crushed under the trillions of gallons of water above you. The vehicles are expensive. And because they need to be so resistant, most of them are not the fastest or streamlined. On top of that, the ocean floor is so vast and dark you would need thousands of vehicles and decades of searching to explore the whole thing. Even the brightest lights cannot penetrate very far. And if you had them, most creatures would flee. Then there's the trip up and down. And because of changing pressures it takes several hours to go one way. We just haven't found an efficient enough, or cheap enough, way to make it worth it. The Mississippi is big, deep, and very muddy. There are loads of dams that need maintenance. But lots of divers won't do the job. There is the hazard of being sucked into the hydroelectric dam. But another reason given is that they are scared of the catfish. The fish just need to sit there and the food goes to them and they can get huge. Sure. The Mississippi is explored. But verifying if those catfish are even there or not is next to impossible. All throughout the world, wherever there are glaciers, there are crevasses. Massive ones. Ones nobody ever even knows exists because they are under snow. Ones that look like a small hole but open up into massive chasms you could never climb out of. etc. The fear, obviously, is never coming back out. An example of a really scary place full of them is near the base of Everest from the south side, the Khumbu Icefall. It's the start of a massive glacier. And it moves fast enough that it's constantly changing. People actually do climb over the top of it as part of the primary route to climb Everest. But actually going down into the crevasses is something you absolutely avoid. And even if you did go down and explore one day, a few hours later everything could be very, very different. Many of the graves of the Chinese emperors have tombs that have been discovered but yet to be excavated due to various reasons such as funding, dangers, respect, and other reasons.